Have you ever felt like something in your life is quietly shifting, but you can't fully explain it? Like things aren't falling apart, but they're not the same either? People you once felt connected to now feel distant. Conversations that used to excite you now feel empty. And the things that once mattered so much suddenly don't carry the same weight. It's confusing, isn't it? Because nothing is clearly wrong. But nothing feels completely right either. You find yourself thinking more, reflecting more, pulling back without even trying to. And maybe the strangest part is this. A part of you feels uncomfortable. But another part of you feels calm. Like something inside you knows, this is happening for a reason. But what reason? Why does growth feel like loss? Why does becoming something new feel like losing parts of who you used to be? And why does it feel so lonely, even when nothing is technically wrong? Maybe you've asked yourself, why am I changing? Why can't I connect the same way anymore? Why do I feel like I'm outgrowing everything, all at once? And deep down, there's a quiet uncertainty. Because you don't know if this is progress. Or if you're slowly losing something important. So you try to hold on. To old habits. Old connections. Old versions of yourself. But it doesn't feel natural anymore. It feels forced. Like trying to fit into something that no longer belongs to you. And that creates a strange tension inside. Between who you were and who you're becoming. You can feel it. Something is ending. But something else hasn't fully begun yet. You're in between. Not who you used to be. And not yet who you're meant to become. And that space. It can feel uncertain. It can feel uncomfortable. It can even feel a little scary. But what if this isn't confusion? What if this isn't loss? What if this feeling, this shift, this distance, is actually a sign? A sign that something in your life is about to change in a way you never expected. If you're feeling this strange mixture of excitement and unease, let me assure you of something important right away. This isn't your fault. You're not broken. You're not too sensitive or too complicated. You are not failing at life just because things feel different right now. The world around us has conditioned us to believe that growth should feel easy, smooth, and predictable. But real growth is almost never comfortable. It's rarely neat. And it almost never follows the path we imagined. Think about it. From the very beginning, we're taught to respond to life in ways that create resistance rather than flow. We're told to hold it in, be strong, don't overthink, or just let it go. And while these words might seem harmless, they plant a subtle message: your natural response is somehow wrong. And that's where the tension begins. You're someone who notices more. You feel more. You care more. And because of that depth, life has always impacted you differently than it impacts others. Small moments stay with you. Tiny interactions can leave an echo that lingers for days or even weeks. And yet, when you try to talk about it or when you simply feel it, you're told to calm down or don't overreact. Over time, this builds a quiet pressure. You begin to question yourself. You start asking, why can't I just be normal? But here's the truth, there is no normal for someone with the capacity to feel deeply. Your experiences, your emotions, your sensitivity, they're not flaws. They are part of your unique wiring. And they're exactly what allow you to notice opportunities, connections, and subtleties that others miss. You see things others overlook. You sense truths others avoid. You feel energy and emotion on a level that most people will never understand. And yet, without guidance, this can feel like a burden. The weight of your own awareness can become overwhelming. People around you may not respond in ways that validate your experience. Situations may seem unfair or confusing because your inner world is operating on a different wavelength. And when that happens, it's easy to feel isolated, anxious, or even out of place. But let me make this perfectly clear, feeling deeply is not a weakness. It's a strength. And the reason it doesn't feel like one yet is simple, you've been trying to manage it using strategies that don't honor your depth. You've been attempting to suppress or control what is inherently natural for you. Imagine trying to contain water in a rigid box. No matter how tightly you seal it, the water will eventually find cracks, seep through, or spill over. Your emotions are like that water. They are not problems to be solved or weaknesses to be hidden. They are signals, information about your needs, your priorities, and your alignment with life. The moment you start seeing your feelings as neutral indicators rather than flaws, everything shifts. You stop resisting what you naturally experience. You stop fighting against the very essence of who you are. And in that space of acceptance, a quiet sense of trust begins to emerge, trust in yourself, trust in your journey, and trust in life itself. You're not broken. You're not overreacting. You're not failing. You're evolving. And every confusing, intense, or unsettling emotion you feel right now is a signal pointing you toward the next level of your life. So take a deep breath and let yourself feel it without judgment. Allow the moments of uncertainty, intensity, and discomfort to exist alongside your awareness that this is part of something larger, something meaningful. The inner tension you feel isn't a problem to fix. It's a compass, quietly guiding you toward growth, clarity, and the best phase of your life. Remember, you're not alone. Many people who have gone through similar shifts have felt exactly what you're feeling now. And the most important truth is this: you are capable of navigating this phase with grace, insight, and quiet strength. Your depth is your power. Your awareness is your guide. And your life is already preparing to move you into something extraordinary if you allow yourself to trust it. Most people misunderstand this phase completely. They think something is going wrong. They assume that feeling disconnected means something is broken. That losing interest means they're becoming negative. That confusion means they're lost. But what if none of that is true? What if what feels like a breakdown is actually a transition? Because here's what most people do without even realizing it. The moment things start to shift internally, they panic. They try to go back. Back to old routines. Back to old relationships. Back to the version of life that once felt certain. Not because it still feels right, but because it feels familiar. And familiarity creates a false sense of safety. So instead of allowing the change, they resist it. They force conversations that no longer flow. They hold on to people they've outgrown. They try to recreate feelings that no longer exist. And when it doesn't work, they blame themselves. They think, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe I'm changing too much. But they're asking the wrong question. It's not why is this happening to me? It's what is this trying to move me away from? Because not every loss is a mistake. Some losses are corrections. Another thing people do. They try to figure everything out at once. They want clarity immediately. They want answers now. So they start analyzing every detail. Every feeling. Every thought. Every interaction. They replay conversations. They question decisions. They search for meaning in every small shift. But this doesn't bring clarity. It creates noise. Because clarity doesn't come from forcing answers. It comes from allowing space. And when you don't give yourself that space, you stay stuck in mental loops. Thinking, but not understanding. Moving, but not progressing. And then there's something even deeper. Attachment to identity. Most people don't just hold on to situations. They hold on to who they were inside those situations. The version of themselves that felt certain. That felt connected. That knew where they belonged. So when life starts changing, it's not just external things that feel different. It's you. Your reactions change. Your interests shift. Your tolerance decreases. Things you once accepted no longer feel right. And that creates discomfort. Because now, you don't fully recognize yourself. And that can feel unsettling. So what do most people do? They try to go back to who they were. But that version no longer fits. And trying to force yourself into an outdated identity creates even more tension. So now you're caught in between. Not who you used to be, but not yet who you're becoming. And this in-between space. This is where most people struggle the most. Because it feels like nothing is working. Old things don't feel right anymore. New things haven't fully formed yet. So it feels like standing still. But you're not standing still. You're transitioning. And transitions are never clear. They are messy. They are uncertain. They are uncomfortable. But they are necessary. Because you cannot move into a new phase of life while holding on to everything from the old one. Something has to shift. Something has to fall away. Not because you're losing, but because you're making space. And this is the part most people don't understand. Feeling lost is often a sign that you are no longer attached to a false direction. Feeling disconnected is often a sign that you are no longer aligned with what no longer serves you. Feeling uncertain is often a sign that something new is trying to emerge. But instead of trusting that process, people fight it. They rush it. They question it. They doubt it. And in doing so, they delay it. Because growth cannot be forced. It can only be allowed. So if you're in this phase right now, where things feel unclear, where you don't fully recognize your life, where you feel like you're outgrowing people, places, and even parts of yourself, understand this. You are not falling apart. You are being realigned. And realignment doesn't feel comfortable. It feels unfamiliar. But unfamiliar doesn't mean wrong. It means new. And what most people see as confusion is often the early stage of clarity. Not the kind of clarity that comes instantly, but the kind that builds quietly. As you stop resisting what is trying to change. So instead of asking, how do I fix this? Ask something different. What is this phase preparing me for? Because the moment you stop trying to go backwards is the moment you start moving forward. Even if it doesn't feel like it yet. There is a deeper principle behind everything you're experiencing right now. A principle most people never fully understand. Even though it quietly shapes every part of their life. And once you begin to see it, everything starts to make sense. This principle is simple, but powerful. Your inner state is not just reacting to your life. It is guiding the direction of it. Most people grow up believing that life happens first. And then emotions follow. Something good happens, you feel good. Something bad happens, you feel bad. It seems logical. But what if that's only part of the truth? Because if you look closely, you'll start to notice something different. Two people can go through the same situation and experience it in completely different ways. One feels overwhelmed. The other feels challenged, but steady. One sees loss. The other sees redirection. So what creates that difference? It's not the situation. It's the internal state. This is what thinkers like Joseph Murphy try to explain in a very simple way. Life does not just respond to what is happening around you. It responds to what is happening within you. Your beliefs. Your focus. Your emotional patterns. They don't just describe your reality. They shape how you experience it. Now, this doesn't mean you consciously control every moment. But it does mean something important. The way you relate to your inner world determines how that inner world affects your outer life. And this is where most people get stuck. Because when their internal state starts changing, they assume something is wrong. When they feel disconnected, they think they've lost something. When they feel uncertain, they think they've failed. But in reality, their inner world is shifting before their outer world catches up. And that gap between inner change and outer results, that's where discomfort is created. Think of it like this. For a long time, you've been living with certain beliefs, certain expectations, certain patterns of thinking and feeling. And those patterns created a certain type of life, a certain type of people around you, a certain type of situations, a certain type of emotional experience. But now, something inside you is changing. Maybe you're becoming more aware. Maybe you're questioning things you never questioned before. Maybe you're no longer satisfied with what once felt enough. That internal shift. It's not small. It's fundamental. Because the moment your inner state begins to change, your alignment with your current life also begins to change. And that's when things start to feel off. Not because life is falling apart, but because it's no longer matching who you are becoming. And this is the hidden law most people miss. Before your external life transforms, your internal identity must shift first. Not slightly, but deeply. An identity is not just what you say about yourself. It's what you believe, what you expect, what you emotionally accept as normal. So when your identity starts evolving, your tolerance changes. What you used to accept now feels uncomfortable. What you used to ignore now stands out clearly. What you used to chase now feels meaningless. And this can feel confusing, because your external life hasn't fully changed yet. But your internal world already has. So you're living in a reality that no longer reflects you, while slowly becoming someone new. That's why this phase feels so intense. You're not just changing habits. You're changing identity. And identity shifts don't happen quietly. They disrupt things. They create distance. They bring awareness to what no longer fits. But this disruption is not chaos. It's correction. Because life naturally moves toward alignment. And when your inner state evolves, everything that doesn't match it begins to fall away. Not as a punishment, but as a process. And the more you resist this process, the more uncomfortable it feels. Because you're trying to hold on to something that no longer aligns with who you are becoming. But when you begin to understand this principle, something shifts inside you. You stop seeing change as loss. You start seeing it as preparation. You stop asking, why is this happening? And you begin asking, what is this leading me toward? Because once your inner world changes, your outer world cannot stay the same forever. It has to adjust. It has to reorganize. It has to reflect your new state. But that takes time. And in that time, you are being reshaped. Quietly. Deeply. Powerfully. So if things feel uncertain right now, if life feels like it's in between, if you feel like you're outgrowing your current reality, understand this. You are not stuck. You are not lost. You are in the middle of a realignment, where your inner world is preparing your outer world for something better, even if you can't fully see it yet. Now, let's bring everything together. Because at this point, you've felt the shift. You've questioned it. You've tried to understand it. But here is the moment where it becomes clear. What you are experiencing right now is not confusion. It's a signal. A very specific signal. A signal that you are entering one of the most important phases of your life. And the truth is, this phase doesn't begin with success. It doesn't begin with clarity. It doesn't begin with everything falling into place. It begins quietly. Internally. Through subtle changes that most people overlook. But once you recognize them, everything starts to make sense. These are the signs. Not loud. Not obvious. But powerful. The first sign. You feel a natural distance from people you once felt close to. Not because of conflict. Not because of something dramatic. But because the connection simply feels different. You're not forcing distance. It's happening on its own. And that's because your inner world is no longer matching those connections. The second sign. You begin to enjoy being alone. Not in a lonely way. But in a peaceful way. Silence feels better than noise. Your own presence feels enough. And for the first time, you're not running away from yourself. The third sign. You're becoming more aware of your thoughts. Not just thinking, but observing. You notice patterns. You catch yourself before reacting. There's a gap now between what you feel and how you respond. And that gap is growth. The fourth sign. Your priorities are changing. Things that once felt urgent now feel unimportant. And things you once ignored now feel meaningful. It's like your internal compass is being recalibrated. The fifth sign. You naturally start distancing yourself from what drains you. Toxic environments. Negative conversations. Unhealthy habits. Not through force, but through awareness. You simply don't feel aligned with them anymore. The sixth sign. You start recognizing your own worth. Not in a loud or arrogant way, but in a quiet, steady way. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself constantly. You no longer chase validation the way you used to. Because something inside you already knows your value. The seventh sign. You stop needing everyone to understand you. Before, you wanted people to see your perspective. To validate your feelings. But now, you're okay with being misunderstood. Because your sense of self is no longer dependent on others. The eighth sign. You begin to observe your emotional triggers, instead of being controlled by them. You still feel things deeply. But now, there's awareness. You don't react instantly. You don't get lost as easily. You see the emotion, without becoming it. The ninth sign. You gain clarity about what you don't want. And this is important. Because before you can fully see what's right for you, you become very clear about what isn't. And that clarity creates direction. The 10th sign. There's a quiet feeling inside you. That something better is coming. You can't fully explain it. There's no clear evidence yet. But it's there. A calm, steady sense. That this phase means something. That all this change is leading somewhere. And this is the most important part. Because this feeling. It's not random. It's alignment. So when you look at all of this together. The distance. The awareness. The shifting priorities. The emotional clarity. You start to see the truth. You're not losing your life. You're outgrowing it. And that's the revelation. The reason this phase feels so uncomfortable is because it's not designed to feel comfortable. It's designed to prepare you. To remove what no longer fits. To reshape how you think. To strengthen how you see yourself. So that when the next phase begins, you're ready for it. Not just externally, but internally. Because the best phase of your life is not something that suddenly appears. It's something you grow into. And what you're experiencing right now is that growth. Even if it doesn't fully make sense yet. Even if it feels uncertain. Even if it feels like you're in between. This is the beginning. Not the end. And once you truly understand that, you stop fearing the change. And you start trusting it. Understanding something intellectually is one thing. But believing it? That comes from seeing it in real life. Because when you recognize the same pattern, not just in yourself, but in others, it becomes real. Not just an idea, but a truth you can trust. Let's look at this in a simple way. There was someone who once felt exactly like you might be feeling right now. Their life wasn't falling apart, but it wasn't making sense either. People they were close to started drifting away. Conversations felt forced. Even places they once loved didn't feel the same anymore. At first, they panicked. They tried to fix it. They reached out more. They tried to bring back the same energy. They blamed themselves for the distance. But nothing worked. In fact, the more they tried, the more disconnected everything felt. So eventually, they stopped forcing it. Not because they gave up, but because they were tired. And in that space, something unexpected happened. They started spending more time alone. Not scrolling. Not distracting themselves. Just being. At first, it felt uncomfortable. But slowly, it became peaceful. They began to understand themselves more clearly. What they liked. What they didn't. What they had been tolerating without realizing it. And within a few months, their entire environment began to shift. New people entered their life, naturally. Opportunities appeared, without struggle. Conversations felt real again. Not because they chased anything, but because they changed internally. There was another person who struggled deeply with feeling lost. They woke up every day with a strange heaviness. Not sadness exactly, but a lack of direction. Nothing excited them anymore. And that scared them. Because they thought something was wrong. They kept asking themselves, why can't I feel the same way I used to? Why does everything feel empty? So they tried to fix it. They kept themselves busy. They tried new things. They forced motivation. But it didn't work. Because the problem wasn't outside. It was internal. Eventually, they stopped trying to feel better. And instead, they allowed themselves to feel exactly how they felt. No pressure. No judgment. Just awareness. Days passed. Then weeks. And slowly, something shifted. Clarity started to return. Not all at once, but in small moments. They began to realize they weren't empty. They were clearing space. Letting go of interests that no longer aligned. Releasing goals that were never truly theirs. And once that space was created, new direction appeared. Not forced. Not rushed. But natural. And then there was someone else. Who always felt everything too deeply. Every small situation affected them. Every interaction stayed in their mind. They thought it was a weakness. Something they needed to fix. So they tried to become less emotional. They tried to detach. To not care as much. But it never worked. Because that wasn't who they were. Eventually, they stopped trying to change their depth. And instead, they changed how they related to it. Instead of reacting instantly, they paused. Instead of overthinking, they observed. Instead of identifying with every feeling, they created space. And over time, their sensitivity didn't disappear. It transformed. It became awareness. It became intuition. It became clarity. And that same depth, which once felt like a burden, became their greatest strength. Now, if you look at all of these stories, you'll notice something. The pattern is always the same. At first, there is confusion. Things don't feel right. Connections shift. Emotions intensify. Then, there is resistance. Trying to fix. Trying to go back. Trying to understand everything. But nothing works. And finally, There is a moment of release. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just quiet acceptance. And that's where everything begins to change. Because the moment you stop forcing life to stay the same is the moment it begins to move forward. And this isn't coincidence. It's a process. A natural transition that happens when your inner world evolves. So if you're in that phase right now, where things feel unclear, where life feels like it's shifting beneath you, understand this. You're not alone in this experience. And more importantly, you're not at the end of something. You're at the turning point. The place where everything starts to realign. Where the old version of your life fades. And the new one slowly begins to take shape. And just like in every story, it may not feel clear right now. But if you allow the process, if you stop resisting the change, if you trust what is happening within you, you will see the same result. A life that feels more aligned, more peaceful, more real. Not because you forced it, but because you became ready for it. Now the question becomes, what do you actually do with all of this? Because understanding something is powerful. But applying it is what changes your life. And the truth is, this phase doesn't require you to do more. It requires you to do things differently. Not with force, but with awareness. So let's make this simple. The first step. When you feel overwhelmed, pause. Not for a long time. Just a few seconds. Before you react. Before you overthink. Before you try to fix anything. Just stop. And notice what's happening inside you. Name it quietly. This is confusion. This is pressure. This is fear. Not I am confused. Not I am broken. Just observing. Because the moment you name an emotion without becoming it, you create space. And that space is where control begins. The second step. Stop trying to figure everything out at once. You don't need all the answers right now. In fact, trying to get them too quickly creates more confusion. So instead of asking, why is everything changing? Where is my life going? Ask something simpler. What feels right now? Not for the future. Not for everyone else. Just this moment. Because clarity is built in small decisions, not big conclusions. The third step. Allow distance, without guilt. If you feel like pulling back from certain people, if conversations don't feel natural anymore, don't force it. This doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're evolving. And forcing connection where there is no alignment only drains your energy. So give yourself permission to step back, to be quiet, to choose your space, without explaining yourself to everyone. The fourth step. Protect your energy. Right now, your internal world is shifting. And that makes you more sensitive to what you allow in. So pay attention. What drains you? What lifts you? What leaves you feeling heavy, without a clear reason? Start reducing what drains you. Not aggressively. Not all at once. But gradually. Because your environment influences your state more than you realize. The fifth step. Change how you talk to yourself. Because during this phase, your inner voice becomes very important. If you keep telling yourself, I'm lost. I don't know what I'm doing. Something is wrong with me. You create resistance. But if you shift that voice, even slightly, to something like, I'm figuring things out. This is part of my growth. I don't have all the answers yet, and that's okay. You create support instead of pressure. And that changes how you experience everything. The sixth step. Let go of the need to rush. This is important. Because when things feel uncertain, the natural reaction is to hurry, to fix, to decide, to move forward quickly, just to escape the discomfort. But real alignment doesn't happen in a rush. It happens in stillness, in allowing, in trusting that clarity will come at the right time. So instead of forcing progress, allow it. The 7th step. Start trusting your internal signals. Not every feeling is meant to be ignored. Some are guiding you. That discomfort you feel around certain people. That lack of excitement toward things you once loved. It's information. It's showing you what no longer aligns. So instead of questioning it, start listening to it. Gently. Without fear. Now here's the deeper truth behind all of this. You don't need to become someone new. You're already becoming them. Naturally. Without forcing it. Your job is not to control the transformation. Your job is to stop interfering with it. To stop going back to what no longer fits. To stop doubting every internal shift. To stop rushing the process. Because the more you allow this phase, the more clearly your next phase will reveal itself. So if you remember anything from this, let it be this. Pause more than you react. Observe more than you assume. Trust more than you doubt. Because this phase, it's not here to confuse you. It's here to guide you. Step by step. Into a version of your life that finally feels right. Even if you're not fully there yet,